I was 7 months pregnant when my life quietly collapsed, not with screaming fights or broken plates, but with the soft hum of betrayal that didn't even bother to hide. My sister had always been the kind of person who borrowed things without asking and returned them like she had done me a favor. Clothes, makeup, money, even time. I used to laugh it off, telling myself that blood made certain boundaries unnecessary. It took losing my husband to understand how wrong I had been. It started with her showing up more often after I announced the pregnancy. She said she wanted to help, that she was worried about me being tired and emotional. I believed her because I needed to believe someone was on my side. My husband welcomed her with the same careless warmth he gave everyone, and I mistook that for kindness instead of what it really was. I was swollen, exhausted, and trying to pretend that the distance growing between us was just stress, not the beginning of something rotten. Then one evening I came home early from a prenatal appointment that had been cut short. I expected to find the house empty, maybe quiet enough for me to lie down for a moment before the nausea returned. Instead, I walked into a silence that felt staged, as if the walls were holding their breath. My sister's car was outside. My husband's shoes were still by the door. I didn't hear anything scandalous, didn't catch them in a dramatic scene. All I felt was the shift, that sick intuition that arrives before truth does. Within weeks, he had moved out under the excuse that he needed space to think. My sister stopped calling. My mother said I was being dramatic and should focus on the baby instead of inventing problems. When the truth finally landed, it didn't come with an apology. It came with a social media post of them on a beach, smiling like they had built something beautiful instead of burning someone else's life down. I raised my child alone while they played house with the comfort of my absence. 5 years passed, 5 years of scraping together stability, learning to be both parents, learning to swallow anger so it didn't poison my mornings. I thought the worst was behind me until my sister's name appeared on my phone again last week, glowing like a ghost from a life I survived. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't mention the past. She simply said she was expecting, and that family should show love with something meaningful this time. I stared at the screen, my heart thudding, knowing this wasn't just a message. It was a test, and I had already decided I wouldn't stay silent anymore. For a few minutes, I just sat there with the phone in my hand, letting the words replay in my head like a bad song I couldn't turn off. She wasn't asking if I could afford anything or if I even wanted to be involved. She was telling me in that same entitled tone she had always used that it was my turn to prove my loyalty. 5 years of silence, 5 years of pretending I didn't exist, and now she wanted love measured in money. I didn't respond right away. I watched instead. I clicked on her profile for the first time in years and scrolled through the carefully filtered life she had built with the man who once vowed to stay with me. There were vacations I had never been able to take, new furniture, restaurant meals that cost more than my weekly groceries. They looked effortless, as if happiness had simply fallen into their laps. What I noticed more than the smiles, though, was how carefully everything was framed. No friends in the comments asking about me. No references to the past. Just a spotless narrative where I had never existed. Over the next few days, she sent more messages, each one more confident than the last. She talked about how expensive baby things were now, how she wanted something special, something that showed I had forgiven her. She said the number plainly, $6,000, as if she were ordering a coffee. I let the messages stack up without answering. And in that quiet, I began to see the pattern I had been too hurt to recognize before. She had always taken what she wanted, and when resistance appeared, she rewrote the story so that she was the victim. I started to dig, not out of revenge, but because I was tired of being the person everyone expected to bend. I remembered the credit card offers that used to arrive at my old house under my husband's name even after he left. I remembered the odd withdrawals during my pregnancy that he blamed on hospital bills that never seemed to have receipts. At the time, I had been too overwhelmed to question it, too focused on surviving the day. Now I logged into old accounts, searched through dusty email folders, followed trails I had abandoned when grief was louder than logic. What I found wasn't dramatic at first, just small things. Charges that didn't match my records. Payments that had been made from accounts I no longer controlled. Then the pattern sharpened and the fog lifted. During the months when I had been at my most vulnerable, when I was carrying a child and barely sleeping, my husband had quietly drained our shared savings. The money hadn't disappeared. It had moved first into accounts I had never been added to, then into joint purchases that showed up later in my sister's lifestyle. Furniture bought before they were officially together. Trips booked under his name, but posted on her feed. The gift demand suddenly made sense. It wasn't about a baby. It was about access. It was about reminding me of the old rules, that I was the one who gave and swallowed the loss, that they could still reach into my life whenever they needed something. I realized she wasn't confident because she was happy. She was confident because she assumed I was still broken. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with a stack of printed statements and a notepad, writing down dates and amounts, reconstructing a timeline I should have built years ago. Every number felt like a memory I had tried to erase. The stroller I never bought because money was tight. The daycare I couldn't afford, so I took extra shifts. The birthday parties I kept small, so my child wouldn't see me counting bills. All that sacrifice had funded their comfort. By morning, the sadness had changed into something sharper, something steadier. I didn't feel like crying. I felt like standing up after being on my knees for far too long. When my sister sent another cheerful reminder about the gift, I finally typed back. I didn't argue. I didn't accuse. I simply told her I needed time, that I was looking into something important, and would get back to her soon. As I hit send, I wasn't stalling anymore. I was preparing, and for the first time since my life had split in two, I felt completely certain about what I was going to do next. I didn't meet her with anger. I met her with clarity. A week later, I sent one final message, not about a gift, but about the money that had vanished during my pregnancy, the accounts I had traced, the timeline I had rebuilt. I told her I had everything organized and that I was done being the quiet one in the story. There was no threat in my words, just the calm of someone who finally knows the truth. The response was silence at first, then panic. The confident tone she had used for weeks disappeared, replaced by nervous excuses and sudden apologies that didn't even try to sound sincere. By the end of the day, she wasn't asking for $6,000 anymore. She was asking for forgiveness. I closed the conversation without replying. I didn't need to punish her to feel free. Watching the power shift was enough. I put my phone down, made dinner for my child, and realized the greatest gift I had ever given myself was the decision to stop letting the people who broke me decide what I owed them.